2019 marks the end of a decade, and while I wouldn't call this year a stinker, it certainly wasn't the best year for games in the decade. "2019 still has plenty of games though, and because it wasn't so jam-packed, I had the chance to explore other games from previous years as well. So without further ado, here are the top 10 games I played and beaten for 2019. Number 10, Phantasy Star. This game is as old as me, maybe even older. Hold on. Wow! Yep, older! What's probably the most shocking thing about Phantasy Star is that it's held together by a bundle of sticks and tape. Sega did not understand what they were doing with RPGs, and a lot of the math in this game is so off that nowadays, the original game is very hard to get into, let alone play the darn thing. Heck, even the remake, where they fixed the majority of the game, they still kept in a game-killing choice in the game, simply because it was authentic to the experience. So while it may seem like I'm bashing the game, I really want to stress that this game is kinda a miracle through and through. Phantasy Star feels constantly ambitious throughout the entire playthrough, and while playing it, I was constantly baffled with how they made this game back in the day. Phantasy Star itself has a rather simple premise. Alice's brother is killed by a fascist dictator and she wants revenge. But the coolest thing about all this is that this game is set in the space age, where phasers and spaceships are abound, and while the game itself is quite old, the world building is all there and done quite well with what they had to work with. Largely what makes this game so enjoyable is just how tired and true the game plays out. Exploring planets, gathering allies, getting new vehicles, and facing off against big bad enemies. These are all core elements of most JRPGs, and while it doesn't have the same theatrics of newer RPGs, it's still a sight to behold that such an old game understood the fundamentals better than most newer RPGs do. Although if you're playing this game, play the remake unless you like being lost for 2 hours in a maze of walls. Number 9, Wonder Girl, The Dragon's Trap. I'm in love with this game's art style, like it's the first thing that pops into my mind when I think about it. I think it's a safe bet to say this is one of the best looking games ever made. Wonder Girl, or Boy if you prefer, is actually a remake of the older Wonder Boy games, specifically the third one, titled The Dragon's Trap. While the game itself doesn't have a whole lot of story to it, mostly being at the beginning, its gameplay pretty much speaks the rest of the tale. Basically, you go from castle to castle, so to speak, to beat the dragon and try to make the jump back home. I mean, try to get the right body. What makes this whole thing interesting is that each and every form has something different it could do, and has its own stats for their build. Things that you do as a dragon are not the same as a mouse. This has a lot of diversity in the level design and kind of feels like you're playing a new game each time you get a new body. While the majority of the time, new areas are discovered through your newfound body's abilities, it's when you're able to start switching between bodies that really show the game's true potential. It's a bit of a shame how short this game is though, as when you start to get a handle of each of the abilities you acquire from your animal counterparts, it kinda just has one last challenging area for you and that's it. Short, sweet, and very, very pretty, Wonder Girl, A Dragon's Trap is one of the best remakes I've ever played. I didn't even know it was until halfway through. Number 8, Yakuza Kwame 2. If you don't know the gist of Yakuza games, basically they are mafioso movies mixed together with an action brawler. The games function differently from time to time, but the core of the game remains the same. Geyre gets wrapped up in people's business, and he has to help them by being a caring person that could beat anyone's ass. The formula is honestly very tired and true, and to be honest, if this doesn't sound appealing to you, you'll probably never like these games. The games simply give you more of the same with a different story and drama to go through each time. In Yakuza Kwame 2, Kiryu is taking on the Korean Mafia with the help of a potential love interest. There's a blend of drama, heartache, and fighting throughout the story that gives any TV novella a run for its money. And while I like to sit here with you talking about how great Yakuza does its crime drama, honestly, I'm just too smitten seeing Kiryu being a good dad to Haruka and running Cabrera Club to care about anything else this game really has to offer. It's a returning feature from Yakuza 0 and part of the usual add-ons that the Yakuza games give as a sort of way to mix up the usual gameplay and entry. But what makes the Cabrera Club so interesting is that it has its own stories and characters to go along with it. Certain girls you pick up via their submissions, while others you get through advertisement or besting other Cabrera Clubs. In all honesty, this little mode kind of feels like its own game with a narrative and story, and it's legit what made me pleasantly surprised with this entry in the Yakuza series. Just think of it like this. Yakuza Kwame 2 is this wonderful cupcake, and the Cabrera Club minigame is that cherry on top, and you know how important the fruit is on top! Number 7. Luigi's Mansion 3. The sequel to Luigi's Mansion, Dark Moon, was a rather depressing take on Luigi's Mansion's formula that made the whole experience feel less immersive and interesting compared to the original. The third game, however, took these criticisms to heart and ended up making Luigi's Mansion 3 the penultimate experience for Luigi's Mansion. Not only did Luigi's Mansion 3 bring back portrait ghosts and free roaming exploration, but added in so much atmosphere and things to suck up that it outshines all previous entries easily. Luigi's Mansion 3 is honestly a marvel when it comes to compact puzzles and exploring a bunch of unique areas that it really feels that we can't go back to the way the original was. I don't think I want to see Luigi go back and looking at matches again when the hotel in 3 is so lively and interesting. And that's not even considering the little things they did with this game, from interactions with Mario and the Toads, to the music changing depending on people you're talking to. Luigi's Mansion 3 is kind of one of the prettiest games on the Switch, and considering how much detail is in this game, it's kind of hard to really talk about the core gameplay when you're being so shiny. That all being said, I do feel the combat in this game is fairly lacking and simplistic compared to the first game, but Nintendo has seemingly traded the combat for a more puzzle-going experience. So much of this game is loaded with interactions and hints of what to do without the game ever feeling like it's hand-holding you. There were plenty of puzzles that I honestly felt so stumped on what to do, and even more so when you want to get all the gems. Overall, the changes in Luigi's Mansion 3 has easily set the bar for what I want in future installments, and is a must-own for Switch owners that loved the series. Number 6. SpiderMan. This game really gives a sense of exploration and world building that I just don't feel other games do when it comes to licensed products. It's honestly kind of surprising that this game has so much of its world building told through a lot of subtle dialogue choices, characters, and the city around it. It's clear that the characters have lived their lives and been through enough to give weight to their interactions that just simply makes it far more entertaining than any sort of new origin story Insomniac could have come up with. The story itself is great, giving a focus on Negative Man and the origin of Dr. Ock really helps give players a good jumping off point into Spider-Man's universe, while also giving us a treat with other comic characters showing up, and how they affected a Spider-Man's life either as Spider-Man or Peter Parker. The third act is a bit faster paced than the other two, but the build-up itself is earned with plenty of quiet and or well-built moments that have led up to that point. Story beats aside, Spider-Man also has fantastic gameplay that really hammers in movement as the core mechanic. From sneaking around and hanging bad guys on walls, to chasing cars around New York, Spider-Man doesn't let up on how you control the creepy crawler, and while a lot of the game boils down to a point A to point B and clear out baddies on point C, the game remains interesting enough to mix combos, gadgets, and movement that it never gets stale for the time allotted to it. The minigames are also a pleasant surprise if you're not trying to gold rank them, as they often provide a much needed break from the usual story and action. From collecting cloud particles, to catching birds, to participating in medical science, Spider-Man gives enough wacky missions alongside the usual crime fighting that you feel you're being pulled to do everything at once, but in a good way, like the hero that you are. And even if you're not playing Spider-Man, like in the Miles and Mary Jane sections, it certainly feels just as thrilling, if not more so because you don't have powers. These segments are pretty helpful in the sense that it makes you appreciate playing as Spidey all the more than if they weren't there, while also providing a sense of urgency and world building that you wouldn't have if you were playing just as Spider-Man. Heck, my favorite part of this whole game is when you play as Mary Jane, where you're stuck in the train station and ordering Spider-Man around.
Say the line, Bart!
It's a game that makes you feel like Spider-Man.
Yay!
Number 5. Sayonara, Wild Hearts! You ever watch a music video and think, wouldn't it be awesome to play through that whole thing? That's Sayonara, Wild Hearts. From its trippy visuals to its wonderful beats, Sayonara Wild Hearts is such a delightful narrative that never demands much from the player aside from staying immersed in the world it's making. I think some people may be put off by its non-one-to-one rhythm style, but for folks like me that aren't musically inclined but love us some musical games, it's kind of the best thing we could ask for. Tie this all together with an achievement system based entirely on different objectives that help redefine the original goals and levels, makes Sayonara Wild Hearts not just a wonderful afternoon getaway to the 80s aesthetic, but one that you revisit over and over again with new perspective. Short, sweet, and to the point, Sayonara Wild Hearts is something that will stick to my mind, and one of the best things I experienced in 2019. Number 4. Blue Reflection. Magical girls are kinda a dominant archetype in anime and manga, yet video games have tackled very little of this archetype. It physically hurts. Thankfully, Blue Reflection tries to change that. You take the role of Hinako, a girl that was previously an up-and-coming ballet dancer that sustained an injury that ruined her career path, and decides to go to a new school to help with change. While there, Hinako meets up with the mysterious twins Yuzuki and Lime that proceed to promise her the ability to use her legs like she used to in exchange for collecting fragments to battle unknown force threatening the school. Over the course of the game, the three magical girls face off against a great deal of monsters and help people deal with their overwhelming emotions. The battle system is akin to Grandia by having a timeline for both you and your enemy to attack, defend, or use any abilities in hopes of interrupting your opponent while also speeding up your allies, or attacking them. For the most part, random encounters are rather null and void by always having your party at full health from the start, and the battles themselves don't actually give you anything more than materials to craft to help out with fragments you collect to grow stronger, but largely the game isn't so much based on its combat system, but rather the preparation for boss battles and your bonds with your fellow classmates. The core aspect of the game is looking around the school, finding students that are overwhelmed with some type of emotion, and then traveling to their psyche realm to help deal with the monsters and problems that are happening within. The realms themselves act like dungeons that are supposed to represent the overwhelming emotion, with both the scenery and enemies reflecting that. Over the course of the story, though, you do meet up with a number of unique individuals that have far greater fragments and emotions than usual, and you end up strengthening your bond with them to the point they become your ally in your boss battle. The whole system is really cool in the sense you really are preparing yourself to take on these enormous, hideous, angel-like entities from destroying the school and the world with your friends by simply talking to them about tennis, acting, and, girl stuff. Overall, the game is surprisingly tame and forgiving when it comes to its battle system, while still offering complex and interesting ways to fight bosses. Blue Reflection is very Persona-like with the way it treats its cast of characters and you interacting with them. Attached to all this is a rather heartfelt and endearing story about growing up, and not only does it make it for a good JRPG to play, but one to start the genre with. Number 3. Tales of Vesperia. This is kind of my third outing on Tales of games, and honestly, I think I'm really sold on the series as a whole. While a lot of the stories don't seem to connect in any real way, the characters and world building seem to always be a strong suit for them. The cast of characters are all pretty fun and exciting, although perhaps too stereotypical when it comes to the group dynamic, but that kind of helps you grow attached to them as well. Seeing Carol slowly becoming a man, watching Raven warm up to the group, or even Ritza dealing with her crush on Estelle. These cast of characters are so fun to watch and interact with, and have such interesting dynamics with each other that it's a shame we don't get a sequel to this game. The combat also helps reflect the different personalities of each character by having their own unique fighting style. Carol acts as a slow, heavy hitter. Risa is a mage that can do quick physical damage, but their spells deal more damage but take longer to set up. Yuri has the most straightforward way to fight with his sword. Raven uses a bow to help extend combos and deal status damage. And Judah is a combo fiend. Each and every character requires a different playstyle and or way to play the game. And while this isn't new to the Tales of series, it definitely feels more fitting here. The game has 3 full acts, and while Yuri takes up the beginning of the first act, the focus isn't so much on him, but rather the group itself. The game is effectively about the guild Carol wants to start, subtly named Vesperia, after some famous celebrity or some such, and their adventures throughout the world. They go from exploring the world on guild business to solving murder mysteries to even saving the world eventually. All of this is, of course, wrapped together with various skits, cutscenes, and interactions to help you feel like there is more of a group dynamic than most JRPGs would allow. These scenes have always helped break the monotonous tone of grinding that usually occupies JRPGs that don't have them, and while they are a delight to watch, this game is jam-packed with them. Seriously, it's insane how much dialogue, skits, and cutscenes are missable throughout the game, and if you don't have a guide, you're likely to start a New Game Plus just for the chance to see them. And this isn't even going into the New Game Plus system, which can help with a bunch of different achievements and skits that you may have missed on your first playthrough, and just, it's shocking how much content is in this one game. Number 2, Catherine, Full Body. These integrals/remake versions of the same game, but with new added content, are honestly kind of an enigma to the game world. Atlas is kind of the only ones doing this sort of thing, and while I wouldn't say Full Body is a brand new game, I wouldn't call it the same game either. The quality of Full Body is far better than its original counterpart, not only for the improvements made for the game itself, but because the translated dialogue is far more LGBT friendly. While I've yet to play the game for all the endings, the way they handled Q Catherine's route is simply amazing, and Vince truly is a bicon. And yes, Erica is handled far better in this version. Gameplay-wise, they added in a new puzzle type, and while I've yet to try it out, it looks interesting enough to warrant playing the game again with it on. The game itself has also been adjusted to no longer have lives, but rather function where the pillows you got that used to be lives now add to your undo counter, which I really hope to use in hard mode because I honestly never beat this game on hard. Speaking of hard though, while the original Catherine was hard even on normal difficulty, this version seems to have upped it just a bit more. The void on the screen goes up faster than usual, and bosses are far more active than they used to be. Thankfully, some of this is mitigated by Ren showing up on their piano and slowing down the void, both adding a new theme and mechanic at the same time. To add to the rest of the adjustments in this game, they also added an additional floor in Ren's route, which extends the game about another 2 hours, give or take. Sucks when you're doing a whole stream of the game in one day, but it's nice that there was added content than just the cutscenes and whatnot. Overall, Full Body let me experience Catherine in a new way, and I was absolutely smitten by what they did with this new path. It's like finding out that dessert you always eat has a different flavor that you could try, and as a promotion, they could give you some extra fruit on top. Okay, you know what, I might just be hungry rather than making analogies nowadays. Honorable mentions. Steven Universe, Save the Light. A healthy mix between Paper Mario and Grandia's System. Untitled Goose Game. You could be an asshole without any of the repercussions. Mother 3. A truly emotional journey of the evils of capitalism and why we should trust a non-binary agenda. Super Mario Maker 2. The game adds more Mario magic to the Maker formula while having its own campaign, new themes, and gadgets to mess with. Number 1. Fire Emblem 3 Houses. Fire Emblem Fates was so bad that it literally made me unmotivated to try Echoes. But Three Houses picked up my burnt hopes and desires for the series and nailed it with this game. This is the definitive Fire Emblem game. If you ever wanted to get into the series, but maybe it was a bit too hard or complicated, this is the one you do it with. Three Houses added so many quality of life changes that I feel any system Fire Emblem has had before is simply too archaic to recommend to newcomers, and a bit hard to go back to for veterans. Being able to train your units in any given area and effectively mold your army into what you want is exactly what was missing with the Fire Emblem formula. While they may have tossed out things like the weapon triangle, the core game mechanics are still there. You move your units like pieces on a chessboard while trying to capture a spot or defeat a certain enemy. What really captivates this whole thing to be more than micromanaging is the way Three Houses splits the different stories into what feels like 3 different games. For the most part, the game is the same in the beginning with minor changes to the characters you interact with during certain cutscenes, but once things start hitting Act 2, they become a thrill ride of betrayal, heartache, and loss throughout. Unless you recruited all the students, then maybe it's less heartache. What probably makes Three Houses even more compelling is that on top of all the character growth and development throughout the story, it's clear that not one given ending is truly a golden one. Each ending has its own flaws and holes that aren't addressed unless you were to play the other ones, and even then, they don't all act in the same way. No one side is truly right, and each side brings its merit of points to it. Claude's story is mainly to seek the truth of what's going on throughout the war and to open relationships with other countries. Dimitri's is a tale of betrayal, family, and legacy to live up to, all while battling your inner demons. Edelgard's Path talks about the troubling relic system that has placed corrupted nobles into power and overthrowing the church's system because of this. And the church shroud is... it's there. The bigger point I'm trying to make here, though, is that the game rides heavily on its story and characters, and due to the astounding work of the voice actors of this game, the dialogue elevates it even further. It even gets to the point that after beating one route of the game, you can't help but wonder what happened in the other ones, and any game that makes you interested in replaying it instantly after 60 hours is truly a sight to behold. And the reason why Fire Emblem Three Houses is my game of the year for 2019. Well, that was my list for 2019. I certainly don't feel like I played nearly as many games as I could have, but I certainly want to change that for 2020. Hopefully your 2019 was just as good, if not better than mine was. And I hope you all already have plenty of games you want to recommend me to play. If you do, go ahead and put it down in the comments, or just yell it out on any given social media. If you liked this video, I appreciate a thumbs up, either on the video or in real life. And if you share this video to your friends, enemies, or crushes, I'd be ever so grateful. Till then, everyone, sayonara, bye bye.